Dr. Douglas is unable to be here too, so Katie and I will be filling in, I guess. So thank you all for joining us tonight. It is a budget meeting, the third budget meeting we've had, so we're going to go right to that budget session.
That's okay. So we're ready to come up. The agenda does say athletics and special education and actually transportation tonight. Pete Wilcox is unable to join us tonight. He's also under the weather. Jason Johnson's here with me. So we're going to take a stab at planning transportation. So before we get to that, an overview of our state aid. This is the same information I've presented at the last few meetings. Currently looking at a decrease of $240,000, primarily due to that drop in building aid. We're hoping, in a couple weeks, when the budget's finalized, that we'll see a bit more foundation income our way. The highlights of the tax cap calculation this year, our inflation rate is 1.81%, and our tax-based growth factor is 1.0175, down from last year, but still a good number. First one, the calculation that applies those two factors, as well as adjustments for our pilots. As we discussed before, we do have that carryover dollar amount this year because we did not levy the full amount that we could have last year. So $364,000 we can use this year if we so choose. So all told, our maximum allowable levy limit is $41,487,000. Which is $2.6 million increase over what we actually levied last year, or 6.76%. Again, just want to remind everyone that our levy increase typically does not match our tax rate increase. They're two very separate and distinct calculations where our levy percentage increase has historically been more than what our tax rate is. An overall summary of our revenues. Not accounting for our fund balance and reserves, which we'll talk about those later, so we're currently at $76,955,000. The other revenue, the decrease there, as we discussed before, was the loss of the Corning Community College money. Summary for our budgeted expenditures, we're currently at $83 million. Again, still adjustments to be made that I'll be bringing to you in the next few weeks. To start bringing that gap down, that $6.1 million gap. Any questions at this point on the budget as a whole? Okay, we'll jump into transportation, recap from the fire department. I'll get into the breakdown of the salaries, but again, those are always based on our contractual obligations. Equipment is up a little bit. There is a bus lift that needs to be repaired at the bus garage. After I go through my brief overview, I'll have Jason come up and give more detail of what some of these things are. Fuel, we're keeping fairly consistent. We didn't have the new fuel bid. We have the new rates. Those came in looking pretty good. But we're basing these numbers based on projections. So we'll see where we actually end up once we start getting into it. One thing to know, we are starting to transition our buses from diesel to gas, which is a cheaper alternative for the district. Not only the upfront cost of purchasing the buses, but the cost per gallon is cheaper as well. Fuel reimbursement, this is related to the other municipalities that we have agreements to use our fuel island. So that includes Delmar Heights School District, the Millport Fire Department, all agencies of the Village of Portsmouth, and GSD BOCES. They use our fuel island to go and back and look for the cost of the island. Parts and supplies is what you expect from a bus garage, parts, oils, tires, things like that, as well as any office needs. Operating costs are contractual obligations, their share of the energy costs for the bus garage, things of that nature. Jason, do you want to add anything about the bus lift or the fuel or?
Bus lift, folks, the bus lift, we are replacing, we did a project, if you remember years back, we did a project replacing 4 lifts that we had in the facility. This one was the one that we did not replace, which was a car lift. It's gone past its life cycle. We continue to do maintenance on it every quarter of the year for safety, but we are in the process, if you remember last year, we had purchased 2 small Type A buses. It's one of the first for the district in a long time. With the process that being done with DOT, we have to be able to lift them up a certain way. The lift that we have is not able to lift that heavy of a bus up, so we had to look at alternatives in replacing that lift. We've tried to do as much as we could with it, but I think it's through its life cycle.
Did you have a question?
Am I to assume the lift is, did I misread that, only $9,000 to replace a lift?
No, that also, the lift itself is,
I mean, that seems cheap
Yeah,
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's around 20 is what's budgeted for. The equipment does include other needs of the transportation permit, but that's one of the larger items that's in there.
Okay.
So for the breakdown of the salaries, the bulk of it is our bus drivers. We currently budget for the 77 positions that we have to fill for bus drivers. We're currently down 10 drivers. So we're working very hard to find ways to recruit and retain bus drivers, but in the meantime, the bus garage office staff is having to drive as well as the mechanics. So it's creating strain across the board, but everyone's willing to pitch in, do what they need to do to transport our kids as we, work through ways to bring in more drivers. Everything else is consistent with last year. No additional positions between the mechanics, supervisors, and folks in the office. The substitutes, extra paid field trips relates to the bus drivers and the extra pay they get for various other runs. And the health insurance buyout is the contractual obligation for those who opt out of our health insurance. So currently in our budget, there's just shy of $2.8 million of transportation aid. Our transportation ratio is going up a little to 74.5. So this is the estimate of the aid at this point. Before we wrap up the budget, I'll do a projection of where the transportation expenses look like they're going to end up because we're aided based on actual expenditures. So I'll work on the projection, apply it to the whole state aid calculation, and adjust that aid figure as appropriate. We're going to keep up with our bus replacement cycle, and that's for 6 full-size buses and 2 wheelchair accessible buses at a cost not to exceed $1.3. Here's our bus purchase history, the number of buses purchased, and the amount of the proposition. So a couple items I want to bring up that we're considering for the budget. One is a transportation safety vehicle. This would replace a 2003 SUV, I believe, that is currently used in the transportation department. That's used if the bus is broken down and they need to go to the site, bring the kids back. This is the vehicle that goes up the hills that's broken down to get those kids back down. It's also the vehicle that is used for driver training, that follows the buses on its run, so it gets a lot of miles. It plays a very important function of going to those scenes where the buses are stuck in the snow and we need to get folks back down. Jason and his team have done a great job keeping the 2003 vehicle operational all this time, but we think it might be time to consider looking at how to replace that for something more reliable.
What kind of vehicle is it? It is a 2003 Dodge Durango.
Okay, so it's like a nice small SUV.
Yeah, it's a small SUV.
And we're allowed to carry children on that?
Not on that, we're not. So right now, we're in the process, if something, an emergency happens for the district, we have to try to get one of the expeditions that we have, that if it's not on run, hopefully it's not on run, that we can get that up to the bus. And this is in pretty bad weather, where we can't take another bus to get it down off the hill. We've had these situations before. So thankfully, at the time, we've had the expedition around where we could use, but it isn't all the time because we seem to be using them a lot more for runs. That's what worries us.
So will you be seeking to replace the 2003 Durango with a vehicle that could be utilized like another expedition
Absolutely,
where you
yes.
could in fact have studs on?
What we're trying to do is to use it in different avenues. So we want to not just use it for one thing, but for numerous things. So in emergency, in event of an accident, we can take the vehicle off, put the students on, get it down off the hill safely. And the other aspect is we're going to use it for driver training, following behind buses. All the bus routes that we have to have someone as in Rich McLeod, our safety examiner, follow behind those buses, continue to do reviews, driving back and forth, making sure that everyone is doing their job. So it's used, it's vitalized every day.
Thank you.
And the second one is considering implementing GPS on all our buses. Doing so would open up a lot of possibilities of what we could do with our buses. We have the ability to know where our students and buses are at all times. We have the ability to get information to parents. If the bus is going to be delayed on a cold morning, they can get up-to-date information that the bus is going to be delayed. Jason and his team would get updates if there's a mechanical problem on the bus. They would get alerts. So there's a lot we can do with it. We're still working on pricing and what it would look like to implement and maintain such a thing, but we've heard, a need especially for that parent notification. So we're seeing what we can come up with as far as a solution. Most of those parent apps seem to only operate with the GPS equipped bus. There's other ones out there, but they don't seem to quite meet the need or meet the security options that we need to have student data. So we're busy researching and seeing what we can come up with.
On that option there, so some of the older buses might not be equipped then with the GPS enabled, is that?
So if we decide to go this route, we can put it on hold.
Okay.
This is something that all these buses because we're in a 10-year rotation of all our school buses, so they're able to put this on. Depending on what we get, and that's one of the things we have to hit. We'll retrofit back to a 2010 as of right now. And it should, because there are buses out there that had that system, have different systems.
Okay.
So with the new purchase of buses, is your plan to incorporate the GPS in all new purchases, or our plan is to always retrofit after we own the bus?
Well, on my part of that, I would say it'd be great if we could get it going with the buses we have, because then we can get aid on it in the purchase of that bus. Correct me if I'm wrong. But to put it on all the buses, that'd only be better, because then you're doing the whole district wide instead of, well, we just have 8 buses here, and it's going to take 10 years before they fully equip every single bus. So we do have some spares in our fleet, but they are also bus runs as well when we have buses break down or we do DOT inspection. So the idea is to have all of them equipped, because at any one time, any one of those buses can be used as a route. I don't know if that helped answer or not.
And depending on the cost, it is something we want to pursue. It may be something we have to step in over several years if the cost to get the equipment on the buses is too much of a bite in 1 year. And as well as looking at what the maintenance, the ongoing service costs would be to keep the Verizon service or whatever service it would be to have the signal.
Maybe you want to pass on this question, Jason, but if you had to make a choice here, if it came down to a choice, do you have a sense of which the bus garage would prefer of the two options up there?
If I had a choice, the transportation safety vehicle and implement GPS on buses,
Correct.
all day be implement GPS on buses. I'll make whatever we have, I will make work. It's regardless of that. If we have to work on it every day before it goes out on the road, we'll make it work. This is something that if we don't have, we have to stay with the times. That's just my opinion. You guys know I'm up front with everything. If we get this implemented, if this is something that we can do, we're only moving ahead. A vehicle's a vehicle. We can look at that down the road if we absolutely have to. It'd be great if we had both. But right now, it's about students here. So if we can implement that GPS, that'd be far above and beyond what we need.
I think both of them are very important for student safety, so I'm very curious on the pricing, and I'm hopeful we can consider both very strongly. I think The first thing is, you're dealing with bad weather, so that's, timing's an issue, and we want everybody to be safe. And the second one, I think that'd be wonderful on the very cold weather days if the bus gets stranded or delayed. I know there's certainly plenty of districts, I don't know if there's any around here that haven't, but you certainly hear around other parts of the country that are using that system. It's very, very, very valuable for parents and the students.
Yeah, so I hope the next presentation, we have talked about quite a few considerations from the beginning till now. Present you some prices, some of them take a little more work than others, so they might be, ballpark estimates at that point. But that's putting the numbers to the things we talked about so we can really have a conversation of what things look like.
A question about the safety vehicle, really just for understanding. I know last, or maybe 2 years ago, a couple of years, I'm looking at the slide with the bus purchase history. The non-bus SUV vehicles were included as part of that separate proposition.
Yeah.
And so, am I understanding this consideration would be for the bus purchase proposition, or you would do this as part of the normal budget, and if so, why one versus the other?
This would be separate from the proposition. The proposition and the vehicles that we buy through the proposition are eligible for state aid because they're assigned for student runs.
Okay.
This particular vehicle would not be assigned for a specific student run. It would be used for the purposes that Jason explained. So it would be for the transportation department to use for those purposes and not so much for the runs.
Okay. The difference with the previous SUVs, they're dedicated to student runs, and that's why they.
In order to get the aid, we have to demonstrate to the state that students ride those buses and vehicles on a regular basis.
Yeah, so while it could be an incidental aspect of the use of this vehicle,
Right.
The regular.
Not a specific run dedicated
Okay,
to it.
thank you, I understand that.
Any other questions for Jason or Ryan on transportation? Okay, we'll start narrowing this down in the upcoming meetings and showing you all the adjustments that are being made. With the March 19th meeting, we'll do an overview of benefits, and Tony will be presenting the instructional budget.
Just a point of clarification, because when I was putting notes on my calendar, I noticed the 19th is a Thursday. So I just wanted to clarify, are we meeting on Wednesday the 18th or Thursday the 19th?
I believe it's Thursday the 19th.
It wasn't meant, lawyers are great at finding typos, but I just want to make sure I showed up on the right night, that's all.
Yes, I believe the only Wednesday meeting is the one in April.
Okay.